Good morning and welcome. Before we get started, Jackie Barnes from the APTO would like to say a couple words. Morning, Jackie.
Thank you. Good morning.
Welcome.
Good morning, everyone. We're actually at this point. I can't believe it. It's very exciting. I just wanted to mention about the junior prom and the junior prom post-party last weekend went great. We are still the kids were awesome at the post-party, but we're still looking for donations, just to let you guys know. If you've already contributed, thank you so much. And if you haven't had a chance online, you can do the donation through our website. And also, we have Chipotle fundraiser tomorrow between 4 and 8 in Marlboro. Bring the coupon, which is also online, and you'll help out all the expenses from the party. So thank you, and good luck for the summer. Enjoy.
Thank you, Jackie. And good morning and welcome. My name is Lisa Connery. I'm the Director of Guidance here at Algonquin. And this morning we have a lot of great information to share with you about things that your student can be working on over the summer, really to kind of optimize some of their downtime this summer to get a jump start on the fall admissions process, because lots of times when the students come back in September, it gets pretty busy. Before we get started, I just want to make sure that everybody, knows who their student's counselor is, can put a face with a name. So I'll go ahead and introduce the counselors right here, starting with Pam Mackey. Next to her is Linda Hutchins. And we have Becca Haberman. Thank you, Becca. And next to her is Kate Mulcahy. And then we have our twins, Dave Breglio and Jason Lessard. They're dressed alike today. I'm not sure if they planned it. And then next to Jason is Andrea Hodgkin. All right, so the counselors are going to be very instrumental in working with your student in the fall. It takes a tremendous amount of time and hard work on their part, so thank you guys for all that you do to support the students through the process. There's a lot of different pieces and components, but they work very diligently individually with all of the students to help them move successfully through the process. So this morning we're going to spend some time, talking about, we'll go back over testing again. I think we've talked about it a few times in a few different presentations. We're also going to spend a little bit of time talking about recommendations, teacher recommendations and guidance counselor recommendations. We will briefly go over the common application and the essay prompts for the common application. Now, in the fall, when we return, we will go more in depth into the common application. Once students have, begun to open up their accounts and complete the application. Everything that we share with you, we also share with your students. We go into workshops, into the classroom. So on Monday, we shared all of this information and went over all of this with your students. We'll also briefly touch base on, financial aid, interviewing, and, if your student is going to be interviewing at a school, the opportunity to participate in a mock interview down in the CRC. And then again in the fall, we will have a financial aid workshop, and we will have an expert come in from MEFA, the Massachusetts Educational Financing Authority, to really delve more deeply into the financial aid process and what you need to do in order to complete that process. Ahead of time during the summer, you can certainly go on the MEFA website. They have a lot of great, little webinars and things that you can read and research to get a jump start on the financial aid process. We will also, be hosting our annual college fair in the fall, and all of those dates are already set, and they're in the back of the workbook. If by chance you did not pick up a workbook on your way in, we have some more outside the door, okay? So at this point, I'm going to turn the presentation over to the counselors and let them share more information with you. And as always, if you have questions, please feel free to reach out to us. Call us, email us. We are happy to help you. Your first time through the process, come on in for an appointment. We're more than happy to sit down with you and walk you through this process, okay? I think the hardest thing is we don't always know what you don't know, or maybe what you or your student need help on, so please feel free to reach out to us, okay? So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Andrea Hodgkin, where she's going to, talk a little bit about testing. So welcome, Andrea.
I am so sick of testing. And you guys probably are too. So just quick overview, because we've talked about this so many times. ACT and SAT are the main admissions tests that colleges would be looking for. They use those tests interchangeably, so they don't care which one students take. We often recommend that students do take the SAT and ACT one time each, just to see which one's a better test, and then when they come back in the fall, they would take whatever their preferred test is again. So most students do take the test at least twice. I think ACT and SAT, that would cover most students here. Some schools will require subject tests, and that's something that as you and your children are looking and narrowing down college lists, you need to check to see what the college actually requires or recommends. So that's really kind of an overview of what we've talked about before. So if you turn to page 2 and 3 of your workbook, I just want to point out that's where you're going to see test dates for the fall as well as registration deadlines. SAT offered in August, October, and November. I always recommend that if students are applying early to any schools, so early deadlines usually start November 1st, I would suggest taking either the August or October SAT. And that is because those scores will be available in time to meet that November 1st deadline. ACT, that's offered, it's actually offered in July this year, as well as September and October. So for anyone with those November 1st deadlines, if they choose to take the ACT, again, it's gonna be July or the September. Those scores will be ready. The late October date, you're not gonna have scores ready for November 1st. All right, so I do want to point out just upcoming registration dates because they are coming fairly soon. If students were to want to take that ACT in July, they actually have to register next month, so by June 14th. And then for the August SAT, they will need to do that by July 26th. So I'm mentioning those because we're not going to be here at the school to remind you guys of the registration dates, so you might want to just make note of that. All right, so I think we've talked about the tests. One thing that you guys have not heard about yet is sending test scores. So sending test scores, that is the student's responsibility to have their scores sent from the testing agency directly to the college. Colleges do not consider test scores from us or from the student as official. So that's something every year our students forget to do, is send those scores. We will go over this again in the fall. But the reason I want to mention it now is if your student is applying early, and November 1st they have a deadline, when they take, I would say, the August or October SAT, I would suggest putting down the schools that they want those scores sent to. That's the fastest way they get there. With SAT and ACT, actually students do get 4 free score reports with every time they take the test. This is with their registration. For SAT, I do recommend that students do that. So what would happen is the score report for College Board, that includes every test the student has taken. So a score report would, let's say they took it in spring, in May, and they're gonna take it again in August. The August scores would be sent with the May scores in one report. I think students get nervous and they think, okay, well, I don't want to send my scores because I haven't seen them yet. With SAT, that's not a factor because what colleges do is they're going to take the highest combination of scores. So they're going to look at the highest reading, highest math, regardless of the test date, and they're going to put them together to give the student the highest possible score. So that's what's called the super score, which you might have heard about. ACT, I guess I generally do not recommend students use those 4 free reports. And the reason is ACT, that score report is different in that it only includes a test date. So it doesn't have a history of scores like SAT. So if a student were to take the June ACT and then do it again in September, I would say wait until they get the September results so they can choose which test date to send. The test dates, because you're really only picking one. Some schools do SuperScore ACT, the majority do not. So again, this is something for you guys and your kids to research as you're looking at the colleges to see what the testing policy is. Because if you want to send 2 ACT scores to colleges, you're actually paying twice for those scores. Everything costs money. SAT score reports. After taking that test, if you don't select those 4 schools at that time of registration, you have 9 days to choose to go back and use those, but after that time, those credits expire and there will be a fee, $12 per report. For ACT, it's going to be $13 per report. So bottom of page 3, I just want to point out there are over 1,000 schools that don't use admissions, the SAT or ACT, as part of the admissions process. That's fairtest.org if you'd like to go to that. It's going to list all the schools. There's so many top-tier national universities and liberal arts schools that are actually on that list, and each year more and more are coming with that. I do want to point out, though, for test-optional schools, sometimes they will want students to send scores for a particular major. So I know some schools, let's say, if a student wants to major in education and the school's test optional, they'll say, actually, we do need the test scores for this major. Other thing is any D1 or D2 athletes, they will, the school and NCAA, they will require test scores to be sent. The other piece with test optional schools is they might require test scores to provide merit scholarships in the spring for the students. So that is all about testing, which we're going to go over another time in September. All right, Linda, your turn.
Hello, good morning. I am Linda Hutchins, and I am going to be going over Naviance with you today. So we use Naviance at school. We use it for the career and the college exploration. And we just want to make sure that you at home are also getting the most out of Naviance. So I'm going to share with you some of the features that we use here so that you can look at them at home. To begin with, you can access Naviance from our website going into the guidance page. I just want to stop and give a quick shout out to the guidance page. We try to update that and provide you with useful links, maybe to financial aid, outside scholarships, and also if your child wants to find a job, we update that regularly with any business that calls here and is looking for students to work for them, or we'll have people calling in for volunteers. So if you want to check that out, it's a really good resource if your child's looking to get involved this summer. So now if you log into Naviance, the first thing that we do at every workshop that we have with students that we talk about Naviance is we have them go to About Me and we have them go to their account. And so the first tab is a general information and it's about the student, and the second tab is about the parents. And I just wanted to point out that we send you a lot of emails, a lot of information, and we just want you to know that the email that you have in Naviance for the student and the parent is the one where you're going to get that information. So just go in and check that that's the one that you're using. The other important section, or part of this section, if you scroll down, is the academics. And this is where your child is going to find out their GPA. So at the end of this year, we are going to reconfigure the GPA. So every year, we do it at the end of the year, we give the final grade. So the GPA that we use at Algonquin is the weighted GPA. So we're going to take the grade that they got in the class along with the level of that class, and we're going to compute it. So this year's GPA will include the freshman, sophomore, and junior year. And this is the GPA that will be on their transcripts that we send to colleges. So next year, when we send the transcript, we'll also send the report cards from their senior year, but their senior year grades will not be included in the GPA. Now, if you go back up to the top and you look at the tabs, we have home, colleges, career, and about me. So last year, we spent a lot of time looking at the career tab. So if you go into the career tab and you go to the home page and you scroll down, and you can look at the assessments. So last year, we had every student take the Do What You Are, which is the Myers-Briggs personality test, and we also encouraged them to take the Career Interest Profiler. And based on the results of the questions that they answered, they came up with some careers that may match their preferences and may match their interests. And from those careers, they could also do further research to look into majors that would correspond with helping them get to that career. So this year in January, when we had our workshops with the juniors, we went back up to the top of the Naviance. And if you go into the college tab, and you go into the colleges I'm thinking about. So we asked them to start doing some searches, and we asked them to do their searches and then save the colleges that they were interested in into this chart, colleges I'm thinking about. And I'm just gonna kind of go over some of the columns in this chart. So the first column I'm gonna go over is the delivery type. And if you just kind of go down, some of them have CA and Endicott does not. So every school that is a Common App school, or they will accept the Common Application, is noted here by a CA. And then Endicott, every school has different philosophies, and their philosophy is we want to use our own application because we only want students to apply that really are interested in our school, and so we're just going to use our own application. So you're going to get an idea of how many different applications they're going to need to fill out with this column. The next column is just the application deadline, and I'm going to use assumptions. So they have 3 deadlines. They have the regular decision, which is February 15th. They have early action and early decision, which is November 1st. Every one of these deadlines and way you apply has pros and cons. We are going to go through these individually with each student and help them strategize which is best for them. Early action means I'm interested in this school, I'm going to apply to this school, I'm going to apply to the early deadline, and they're going to let me know earlier than the regular decision deadline if I got in. This is comforting for a lot of students because they relax and I got into a couple, now I can wait for the rest of them, and it just helps you have a nice winter break. Early decision is a binding agreement. That means that you've done all of your research and this is the college that your student wants to go to. And there is no other school that they even want to look at. So if you apply to this school, the students will have to sign saying that they understand that it's binding. The parents will sign saying that they know that it's binding. And then the counselor will sign saying that we know that you know that it's binding. So once you get the decision, if you get accepted in that school, you will withdraw your applications from all of the other schools, and that is the school that you will be going to. And that would be great news if that is the school that you wanted to select. Then we have the regular decision deadline, and that is for assumption. Again, it's February 15th, and that is the very latest deadline that you can apply as a freshman going to that school. So what assumption would do is they would take all of their applications after the 15th, they would review them, and they would pick their class, freshman class. And then they would send out to the students in March or April the decisions. So most of us sitting in here today, you're gonna have a year-long process. So our goal for you is that in April, you're gonna sit down with all of your options, your early action and your regular decision, and you are going to look at everything and you are going to make the best decision for your family. Then by May 1st, you're gonna send in the deposit to one of those schools. And this column is just going to give you an idea of the different deadlines for each school that your child is thinking about. The next column is interest. And this is a really good tool that we like students to fill out because it gives us information and helps us strategize with them. Is this a high priority for you, medium, low? Is this your first choice? And this is just a good communication tool between us and your family. And then the last column is more. And so one of the things on this column that we talked about in the January presentation was the scattergram. So I'm just gonna kind of go over that really quickly with you. The scattergram, as you know, we're hoping that you're starting to develop your final list of your final balance list of colleges that your student wants to apply to. And the scattergram is a way for you to look at it objectively, to give you data-driven information that will help you select which area it should be in, whether it's a reach, target, or safety. And we want you to have that balanced list so that in April of next year, you have different options that you can look at and then make the best decision. Okay. So the next and final feature that I'm going to go over with Naviance today, if you go back up to the tabs and you go to About Me, and then you go to My Stuff, and you go to Resume. So we are going to ask every senior next year to hand in a resume to us. And Naviance has a resume feature. You can use this resume feature, or you can use any resume feature that they want to use, but I'm going to go over the one today in Naviance. So if you select the pink plus sign, you will notice all the different headings that you can do. It's a resume. They're going to have work. They're going to have extracurricular. They're going to have volunteer experience. They're going to have education. You can go in here and you can add everything from their freshman year to through their predicted senior year. So we're looking at everything for high school, what they did in school, what they did after school, what they did on the weekends, what they did in the summer. So we want to know what they did in their high school experience. And they can add everything here. And one thing I do like about the resume in Naviance is they ask you 2 questions that you're going to need to use when you apply. You're going to fill out how many months out of the year did you do this activity, and how many hours per week did you do this activity. And then they're going to have a brief description that you can fill in what the activity was, if there was any leadership, or if there was any awards, you can fill that in. And then once they do this resume section, when they go to fill out their applications, they're going to be able to use all of this information. It's going to be very helpful for them. So once you enter everything in there, then you're going to go to the print export section, and you're going to go again to that pink button, and that's how you're going to save it. And you can name it. You have 3 different templates that you can choose from based on your preference of how you like it to look. You are going to pick the sections that you want to include in this resume, and you can save it. So you could have a junior year resume. You could have another resume for the whole entire high school through their senior year. You could have a work resume, and you can save it. And once you save it, you can edit it, you can change it, and you can also print it and download it and send it. And so you could download it and just send it to us in an email, or you could download it and print it and give it out when you go to apply for a job. We hope you use Naviance. If you ever have any questions about it, just feel free to give us a call and we will help walk you through it, because it is a great tool that we have here, and we hope that you utilize it. So next, Becca Haberman is going to come up and talk with you about recommendations.
Thank you, Linda. I don't stand here because I can't see over it, so plus Andrea knows I like to move around a lot, right? How many of you, this is your student is the first one applying to college? Oh, look at all them newbies, huh? Okay. Where is your level of stress right now? Is it down here or way up here? Okay. Most of our kids, at least on my caseload, they're so thinking right now about their current year and trying to get through this year and finals and everything that they're not quite there. We are going to be meeting with them individually to sort of help them as they move through this process. The one thing that I tell all the students is, you know what, your mom or dad, they're here to help you, they're gonna be nagging you or whatever. So instead of that, think about setting up a time with them over the summer, maybe once a week or once every 2 weeks. Hey, Johnny, how about we set up Wednesday morning or Sunday night? Let's have dinner and just tell me where you are, what do you need from me to help you through this process? I also tell them that parents are really good with resumes. Most of you probably know how to use a spreadsheet and stuff, so you can help organize them. If you offer that, my 2 boys went here to Algonquin and they went to college, and each of them used me or didn't use me differently. But the one thing I found is the more I nagged them, the worse it got. They wouldn't tell me anything. So talk to your child about what they want from you other than money, okay? Because I also ask the kids when I'm doing these workshops, how many of you are paying for college on your own? Almost none of them are. So I'm like, you know what? That's where your parents come in, so you guys want to have a discussion. All right. They do, before they leave here, there is one important thing that we ask them to do above and beyond their schoolwork and working on their grades and everything, and that is asking at least one teacher to write a recommendation for them. That is very, very hard for them. They are not used to asking for help, and it can be really hard to think about a teacher. Who's gonna write for me? What do I ask? Who do I ask? We'll be sitting down with them individually to talk with them about what is the best teacher. The best teacher is not always the teacher that they got an A with. A lot of times it is the teacher that maybe at the beginning they did not get along well with that teacher. Maybe they weren't doing well. And then they started to talk to the teacher, to stay after for help. And even if they got a C or a B instead of that easy A where they could just whip through things and not have to think about it, they actually had a relationship with this teacher. That is a great recommendation to get. We typically, in most colleges, want to see a junior year teacher. They can use a freshman or sophomore year teacher if they are going to have them again senior year. And a lot of times they don't know, but like if they are going to be taking AP Chem and they've had Miss Burkett for sophomore chemistry, that would be an okay teacher to ask, assuming that they've actually talked to Miss Burkett and didn't just sit in the back of the classroom, because that's not a good teacher. So, asking a teacher is one important thing, but then just asking them doesn't necessarily do anything except the teacher says, yes, I will write the recommendation. What we are asking your children to do is to actually put some thought into what kind of information they want to give that teacher to help them write the recommendation. Some teachers use their own teacher recommendation form with questions that they have a student fill out for them, or on Naviance, we have teacher recommendation forms. I'm actually going to show you 3 different forms. So on Naviance, every time that there's new things, it will be right up here. Right now it says junior recommendations, and we have these recommendation forms in 2 places. One is on a Google Drive. So they just click on that link there, and they will come up and they will see, do you want to click? There we go. And they will see a copy of guidance rec form, copy of parent brag sheet, copy of teacher recommendation form. And so here they click on that teacher recommendation form, and it's going to come up with a Google Doc, maybe. What happened? Okay, there we go. The other way is through the document resources, and you'll see teacher recommendation, new doc. It's a Word document, and it comes up. So hopefully they will know their name. That is important for them to fill out for the teacher. What is their earliest application deadline? A lot of times we tell the kids, when you're filling this out right now, you might not know. Some teachers are going to ask the students to give them this information before they leave for the summer. A lot of teachers will say, wait and see me in the fall. Again, it's up to the teacher when they want this information and how they want it. Do they want your student to share it with them as a Google Doc? Do they want it emailed to them? Or do they want it printed out and handed to them? If they know their major or career interests, they would answer that question. What course they took with that teacher, what their overall grade was, and then we get into some specifics. 3 words that best describe them as a student in that class. What was their best accomplishment in that class? What was the hardest? This information, it does not have to be a book. They don't have to write 10 pages, but a couple of sentences helping guide the teacher with pinpointing certain things that that student felt about that class during the year will help that teacher write a recommendation for the student, highlighting certain things that the teacher remembers plus what the student thinks about. So once they finish up this, they will either Google share it, email it, give it to the teacher. The other form that we ask the students to work on over the summer is the guidance form. So there's a couple of different forms. There's the teacher rec form. Most colleges, by the way, only want one teacher. There are some colleges, and as your student is looking at certain colleges, they will know whether or not a college requires 2 teachers. If the college requires 2 teachers, they never want 2 teachers from the same discipline. So let's say your student's applying to, I don't know, MIT. MIT will want a teacher recommendation from a math teacher and a science teacher. Typically with most colleges where if you're looking at engineering, they tend to want a math and science teacher. If your student's going into art, they might want an art teacher, but most of the time it doesn't really matter to the college what discipline it's in, as much as if that teacher can actually talk about your student other than, Johnny was a good student, he showed up to class every day. That doesn't tell them anything about the student. So we as guidance counselors will write for all of our students, and what we ask for is some more detailed information about the student overall, not just school-wise, but what they think about, what's important to them. Again, what major they might be interested in, work experience. Often I find out that a student might work every summer at a certain summer camp that first they went to, and then they became a counselor. That gives me a glimpse into something that I might not know about. And they might write to me, this has changed my life because of certain reasons. And then I can use that when I'm writing my story about that student. We all write about each student differently, so we don't just use a template and plug in a name. What one extracurricular activity, hobby, or special interest has been most important to them during their high school year? Sometimes this is where I find out more about a Girl Scout project or an Eagle Scout project, or that they play the mandolin that I never knew about. So those kind of things help. This is the hardest one. This gets them every time because they are not used to writing about themselves in this way. And these questions help guide them as they start thinking about college applications and essays. What are they most proud of, or what sets them apart as an individual? Now I caution you, we do not want a 10-page paper on this. A paragraph is great. It gives us an insight, but when we are writing 20, 30 recommendations before November 1st, I don't have time to read a 10-page paper, and I don't want them stressing about this much. This is for them to tell us some information that we can then help them with. Sometimes kids will ask me, well, I don't want to write anything on here because you're going to send that to the college. I'm like, no, this helps me tell the college a little bit about you. I'm not sending what you write here directly to the college. So there's a lot of kind of information here, special circumstances. Maybe your child has ADHD or something, and it took them till junior year to figure out how to organize themselves. That helps me explain certain grades, explain their growth or something like that. So that can be a really helpful thing for a student to write about. And then when they go to their applications, they might remember, oh yeah, I wrote this to Mrs. Haberman. I'm going to write this part as part of my essay or something. So they're going to give this to us in the fall. I don't think any of us are writing over the summer. We need a break, and we will tell them how we want it. Most of us will take it as a Google Doc or email. The other form that we have, this is for you guys. See, I like to give you guys some homework, right? Parent Bragg sheet. This helps us get a glimpse of your student at home. Tell us a little bit about your student. Tell us what you love about your child, how you felt they have grown or developed since they walked into the high school. This gives us another way to talk about them. A lot of times kids are not used to bragging about themselves, so you can brag. Go right ahead, and this will help us. Did I miss anything, Linda? Okay, I have no idea who's next.
All right, hey everybody, my name's Pam Mackey. I'm going to be talking a little bit about the Common App and also the college essay. So some of the things that we've talked about, I'm on page 9, is getting the kids ready and having them prepare over the summer. I always tell them, you hear from teachers, students, the reputation of junior year is that it's the most important, but really, I think the fall of the senior year is incredibly important and probably, unfortunately, the most stressful time that they'll encounter in high school. So we're really encouraging them again and again to do as much as they can over the summer. So before senior year, we're recommending that kids work on finalizing their list of colleges. We're meeting with them right now, and as we're meeting with them, we're going over the schools that they're planning on applying to, and we're identifying the schools that are safeties, targets, and reaches. And I know Linda touched on that when she was looking at the scattergrams on Naviance. So you can pull up those scattergrams to try to identify which are going to be the targets and the reaches and the safeties. And again, we'll be working on that with the kids as well. We suggest completing a rough draft of the essay, and I'm going to talk about that in a minute, and completing the teacher recommendation form and the guidance recommendation form and the resume, which we just covered. So each college has their own application, as Linda indicated. If 2 or more of the students' schools take the common application, then we recommend that the students use it. So the common application is just a general body where you're going to include your activities, you're going to include your school information, your courses, and it's really nice because you only have to do it once. There'll be a separate section for each school, and then you can just send it off. So we do recommend that the students use it. It will be live on August 1st. So I have told the kids to try to set themselves a reminder so that they can get on and start to fill out some of the nuts and bolts of the common application. Again, coming in here in September and not having anything done is really going to set the tone of panic for the kids. So if they can just do a little bit over the summer, they're going to feel like they're already ahead coming in. So you're going to go to commonapp.org on August 1st. Make sure that the application is the 2019-2020 and just start to fill out some of that information. So the major components of the college application that the student is in charge of is the application, the supplements. So some schools may want additional writing along with the essay, and you'll be able to find that on the Common App. Some schools, for example, Assumption and BU, their question is, why do you want to come to this school? The essay and also the fees. These are all completed by the student. The students are also responsible for the test scores, which is what Andrea was talking about. And so they go on to the actual SAT and ACT websites to make sure that those scores are sent directly to the schools. The transcript, which is going to include the freshman, sophomore, junior year, and sometimes, depending on when the students are applying, the first quarter grades or second quarter grades. We will send that. We will send the school profile, the secondary school report, and the counselor recommendation. And then the teachers will send the teacher recommendation themselves. And then again, start looking at when these deadlines are. There's a November 1st deadline. That's going to be UMass Amherst, just for an example, and that's early action. There are some schools that are down south that have an October 15. So just be aware of that. And if your child has an October 15 deadline, just have them touch base with us early on so we can be ready to send out all those materials in time. So Lisa had mentioned the 3rd and 4th week of September, we are going to be meeting with the then seniors to go over a little bit more detail on how to process these applications. And we will also have a parent night, and that date is at the end of the booklet for you. All right, so now we're going to talk about my favorite part. Oh, hang on. Page 10. I said to the kids, I was like, take this, take a picture of it with your phone, keep this workbook, don't just toss it. If on August 1st or during August, they have some time to fill out the common application, this is their cheat sheet, all right? And if they even just do this little bit, they're gonna feel so much more confident coming in the fall of their senior year. So hang on to that. All right, my favorite part is the essay. So the essay is really the time that the students are able to show their authentic voice. We're going to be writing amazing recommendations for them. The teachers are going to be saying great things about them. But this is really their chance to shine and to show something about themselves that is not on the regular application. I strongly recommend that the kids start to think about it over the summer. It can be very, again, stressful if students wait until October to write their essay. So I have a couple recommendations for them. I say sit down, look at the prompts. The prompts are all on page 11. These are the Common App prompts. So keep in mind that there may be other essays that need to be written. So if you can just get this one done and start with this one, you'll already, again, have some traction and be ahead of the game coming into senior year. I'm not going to read the prompts. You guys can check them out. Keep in mind there is one that is any topic of choice. So really a student can write about anything that's meaningful or important to them. Some of my favorite essays that I've read over the past maybe 3 years have been A Treehouse as a Vehicle for Never Growing Up, Cheerleading and Feminism, A Bag of Potato Chips as a communing bonding experience. And my all-time favorite, which was almost 8 years ago, is the $5 foot-long chicken teriyaki sub from Subway. So I had a student who worked at a gas station, and he was there rain or shine, and you guys know how horrible the winters can be in New England, but he would show up every day. And the way that he told the story to show his responsibility, maturity, and growth is that every Saturday when he got his paycheck, he would walk down to Subway and get a chicken teriyaki $5 footlong. And that moment for him, that sandwich, was representative of all of the hard work that he put in and really having something of his own that he worked for. And again, that was 8 years ago. I remember that essay. It still gets me. I really think it says a lot without saying specifically, I work hard. A couple more tips are on, sorry, my numbers are off, page 12. I'll reiterate this. Remember, the essay is one thing students have complete control over. Tell part of your story. Think about what's important to you, what you want the colleges to know about you. Tell a good story. This is your chance to show characteristics and strengths in something that you learned. And again, I think it's helpful to think of an example, a specific example in your life. So try not to generalize too much. Let's say that you want to write about soccer or a missions trip. Instead of speaking broadly about that, try to focus on one specific moment. Spend some time working on it over the summer. I can't say that enough. Sometimes I tell kids, like, if they're stuck, just start free writing. You know, just kind of let your brain go and just write a little bit and see what you can come up with. Think about something, again, that's important to you that reveals more of who you are. Limit the amount of people that are reading the essay. So if you have too many people reading it, it can really kind of lose the student's voice. And that, again, that is the most important thing. So maybe have an English teacher, a guidance counselor. I love reading them, as you can probably tell, or a parent friend. The English teachers do an excellent job on helping students with these. And then proofread. Nothing says I don't care like a sloppily written essay. So make sure that you go through a couple times for grammar, spelling, and things like that, just to make sure that it's a nice, clean essay. And again, I would love to read the essays if the kids want to share them with me. All right. I'm going to hand it over to Kate. Thank you.
All right, so I am going to talk about college interviews, which can be a very important part of the admission decision. It's an exchange of information between the student and some representative from the school. It's really a time where the school can learn more about the student, and also the student can learn more about the school. It's a great way for the student to show their interest in the college, explain why they would like to attend, and also tell the school why they would make a good addition to the campus and the college community. However, not all colleges offer interviews, but you can find more about this on a school-specific literature or their website. Some schools offer alumni interviews, which typically happen closer to home, so it could be at Starbucks, it could be at the school. But many colleges offer on-campus interviews with an admission counselor or a grad student. So this can be done at the same time when you go for a tour or an information session. Sometimes they offer interviews at the same time. With some of the more competitive schools, the admissions office will actually reach out to the student for the interview rather than the student reaching out to the school. Again, the student can check with each school to see what their protocol is. For example, Holy Cross's website says, one of the important ways we get to know you is through a one-on-one interview. While they are not required, we strongly recommend them for applicants. So if it's strongly recommended and a student is able to easily get to the school, it's in the student's best interest to sign up for that interview. So if a student does sign up for an interview, it's really important that they take the process seriously. And they prepare for the interview. So they should research the school and maybe look more into their major if that's applicable to them. It's likely they'll be asked why they're interested in the school, why they're interested in a particular major, again, if that's applicable, and what interests a student beyond academics. So again, the student should be prepared for those, and we also have a list of questions available in the workbook that we've compiled, between hearing from different admissions counselors and also students reporting back to us what was asked of them. We encourage students to bring their resume and a copy of their transcript to an interview to kind of help facilitate a conversation with an admissions counselor, and it also just shows that they're prepared for the interview. So again, we provided a list of questions that may be asked of them, but it's also important that the student prepares questions that they want to ask the admissions counselor or college representative. So they should always come prepared with several questions to ask at the end of the interview. And if there's a question that they have about a particular major that they're interested in, or just something about the school, whether it's about a club sport or, any sort of extracurricular activity or an experiential learning opportunity, the interview is a really good time to ask a question that's really particular to them that they can't learn in a general open house or an information session. Obviously, after the interview is over, it's important to leave with the interviewer's information to write a thank you note or email. In the note, the student should thank the interviewer for their time and also just reiterate why they're interested in the school. So again, the interview can really help a student during the admissions process. As a former admissions counselor, I can tell you about a number of times where on paper a student may not have been admissible to the school. They were a little bit lower than what we were looking for, or they were borderline. But when I met with the student one-on-one, they may have explained a lower grade, whether it was illness, a death in the family that really affected them, but kind of what they had done beyond just what's on the paper and just what we're seeing there. So there were a number of times where in committee, the whole committee was saying the student wasn't admissible, but I talked about the interview and why I thought they would be a good fit for the college. And clearly, because of my strong presentation skills, they were admitted to the school. So again, it's a good way to explain more about yourself than what a counselor can read on a piece of paper, and really going beyond your transcript. So again, most colleges, we've talked about this in previous presentations, but they do track a student's level of interest in the school. So it's important to visit colleges, attend information sessions, go to an open house, but they'll also make note that a student came in for an interview and took that time, that half hour, that hour, to get to know more about the school and to allow the school to get to know more about them. And if a student is nervous about their upcoming interview, they can always make an appointment with Jen Cummings, our CRC coordinator, who can run through a mock interview with them. So again, I mentioned that we've compiled a list of questions that may be asked of them, and questions that they can ask to the counselor, so they can run through this mock interview and Jen can give them some feedback. I think the most important piece with an interview is to always be yourself. So the student shouldn't, answer a question the way that they think they might want to hear. So if they're asked, why would you want to, or who would you want to eat lunch with, someone dead or alive? You don't have to answer, George Washington or Abraham Lincoln. If you want to have lunch with Justin Timberlake, explain why. Just be authentic and be true to yourself. So that's about it with interviews. So Jason can talk to you about the wonderful world of financial aid.
All right, so let's get excited about financial aid. We'll go to page 14. I realize this might not apply to everyone in the room, but I think this is often the most overlooked part of the process and potentially the most important part to think about. Everybody wants your students to be successful, and that's why they're going to college, to set up a successful career, but are they being successful if they have $100,000 in debt? So it's things that are important to think about, and I think it's important to be candid with your students and have these discussions early on. Because sometimes what I see is students get accepted into their dream school, and now they've realized, oh wow, it's going to cost me $40,000 a year, or whatever it may be, and now they have a difficult decision, and they have a hard time wrapping their mind around what that debt might look like over 4 years, because they're so excited, and they've gone through this entire process, and this conversation's been had at the end. So I think it's very important to have this conversation at the beginning. Some questions to really think about is like, what is the realistic cost for you and your family? Do they know how much they are responsible for? Are you contributing, or how much that might be? What do loans even look like? Do they know 25,000 loans could be, $500 a year, or 100,000 could be 2,000 a year? I think of these things. My roommate from college ended up with a lot of student debt. He had $1,200 a year that he had to pay, and he ended up living at home for about 6 years. And I know it was a terrible experience for him, and I think he would have gone back undoubtedly and changed his process if he had known that was going to be the case. A good rule of thumb, it's pretty simple, it's not exact, but if your student knows what they want to major in and they potentially know what they want to do with their lives, you can look at their potential earnings. It's available on Naviance. Ms. Hutchins talked about it. There's a career interest profiler. They can look at careers and see how much that career earns. Their total student debt should be no more than half of their earnings. So if they're going to earn $50,000 a year, their total student debt should be below $25,000. So just something to think about. I also like families to think about, do you have a financial safety school? We talk about a lot of academics. Do you have a reach, target, safety school, but do you have a financial safety school? I say that because you never know what circumstances are going to come up through this process, and you could be towards the end of the process, and maybe something happens with your family or the economy or whatever it may be, and financial circumstances might change. So I think it's always important to have one school they would love to attend that might be a financial safety school. Just something to think about. So that being said, I'm just going to kind of go over briefly. I want everybody to know we're going to cover this more in depth in the fall and kind of go through the nitty-gritty of the application process and how to apply for financial aid, and also how to apply directly for scholarships and where to find them. But quick distinction. So with scholarships, you can kind of break it down in 3 categories. There are local scholarships that are locally to us that the town gives. There's national ones, and sometimes there's direct ones from the school itself. So generally, students have to apply towards any scholarship. The local ones, usually they're a smaller dollar amount, but the chances of getting them are much higher. A national one, you might have a higher dollar amount, but it might be very, very, very difficult to get a national scholarship. We provided a few links to some of the national scholarships right on page 14, so they can search those. Most of them are only available to seniors, so just something to think about. When the student applies to a college, sometimes they might directly give them merit money or maybe talent money for athletics or art or performance or just academics. They can automatically receive money. That's different from scholarships. That's different from financial aid. Now, financial aid, it's its own piece, and it's generally determined by the free application for federal student aid, otherwise known as the FAFSA. So students, in order to log in and apply for the FAFSA, they must first create an FSA ID. This is about a 30-minute process. They can do this now if they wanted to. Once they create that ID, they use that ID to apply for the FAFSA, and they have to do that yearly. So it's very important that they remember their FSA ID, login, and password, because they're going to use that for the next 4 years while they're at school. And if they go to graduate school, they'll have to pull it back up. So the other thing is there's a MIFA organization. It's called the Massachusetts Educational Financing Authority, and they'll be coming here with a lot of great information on September 25th. So I definitely recommend attending that event. And then shortly after, I recommend actually applying for FAFSA in October. So you could attend the MIFA and then directly the week later, go right ahead and apply for the FAFSA. It gets a little complicated, and I don't want to overcomplicate it here, but some colleges require the FAFSA and then their own method of determining financial aid. So sometimes you have an additional financial aid package you have to fill out with a specific college. So you have to keep track of that maybe as you're going through visits, and you can ask. Also, depending on the schools, some schools will give 100% financial needs. So if FAFSA says your family can afford X, the college will make sure that that's the cost. Other schools say we can't do that, and we might meet you in the middle somewhere. So just keep that in mind, too, as you're going through the process. If you look at the upcoming guidance events at the bottom, you'll see there's a college planning night, September 19th. The financial aid workshop, September 25th, as I said. Both of those will help walk through this process in more detail, and they're both great opportunities to learn more about the financial aid and scholarship opportunities. So Dave's going to take over.
All right, so my section is going to be brief, and then afterwards we're going to get to question and answer, where we'll walk around the auditorium and get some questions from you guys. But I'm going to touch on NCAA eligibility for students if they are going to be potential athletes. So this only is going to pertain to maybe a handful of people in the room, but if you do have student athletes and they are planning to potentially play a sport in college, if they are going to be a Division I or Division II student athlete, then they have to go through the NCAA Eligibility Center. You can find the link for this on page 15. They do for Division I and Division II because those are the divisions that could potentially give athletic scholarships. Division III, they do not give athletic scholarships to students, so they do not make them go through the NCAA Eligibility Center. So you can go through the link on page 15, or you can just Google NCAA Eligibility Center. It'll be the first website that comes up. What they're asking your student to do is make an account, and then part of the account, they're going to ask for your educational background. They're going to ask about your sports participation in high school and your sports participation outside of the high school, so any travel club teams that you did, and they just want to make sure that they're tracking all that. And then they're going to ask for you to send a transcript from the high school out to the NCAA. So they're going to actually ask for multiple transcripts. They're going to be an initial one at the start or the end of your junior year, start of your senior year, and then with graduation, they're going to ask for an additional transcript to be sent. A big portion of this is just having your student communicate with their guidance counselor that they are potentially going to play a Division II or Division I sport, and request that those transcripts get sent out to the NCAA. They're just tracking that they have the correct classes at the high school level to be eligible to play sports. If anyone, I coach college athletics, and the recruiting and the eligibility rules that they give out to coaches about 1,000 pages deep. So the NCAA is really involved in this process. So we want to make this as painless as we can for your students. If they are on the fence, they don't know if they're going to be a Division II or Division I athlete, and maybe they could be playing at the Division III level, they can still go through the process and start it through the Eligibility Center, fill out the information, but they don't have to submit it until they know that they will be playing Division II or Division I. There's a $90 price tag that goes in with submitting this to the NCAA, so they can start it with, if they are borderline Division II, maybe Division III, and go through the process that way. Students also have to submit their SAT scores directly to the NCAA, and that can be done right through College Board or through or ACT scores. And they're going to need, depending on your GPA, they're going to ask for SATs or ACTs on a sliding scale to be eligible to play athletics at the Division II and the Division I level. Other than that, if your student is confused about the NCAA process with filling out the eligibility, have them stop in with a guidance counselor. They need to obviously request a transcript, but we can sit with them, pull up the forms that they need, and help them get through it. But it's really a step-by-step process, and the website that they ask you to go on, and it's on page 15, explains it pretty in detail. So there shouldn't be too much confusion around it, but send your kids down to their guidance counselor if they do have questions about it. Okay, so me and Jason are going to walk around with microphones. Raise your hand if you do have any questions, and we can answer them at that time.
So I know you fill out the FAFSA stuff in the fall, but is there a way right now to get a sense of what type of eligibility we might be looking at in the future?
I think there are calculators on their website where you can enter like expected income, and you can kind of do like a free calculator to estimate the what's called the estimated family contribution, which is the number that FAFSA would expect or pump out, saying this is how much your family can afford per year for college, and that number can help you through that process. I believe FAFSA has a calculator.
Websites they have them too.
Oh yeah, each individual college website has calculators as well.
My question goes back to the letters of recommendations, and I know in the fall you're probably going to be inundated with tons of students asking for letters of recommendation. So as parents, what's a reasonable time frame for a turnaround, and do we get to see what the teachers' letters of recommendations are, or are they sent directly to the school?
So part of the process for letters of recommendation next year is we give kids deadlines. So if you have a November 1st deadline, this is the date we expect you to turn in all your recommendation forms to your teachers and your guidance counselors to give us a reasonable amount of time to sit and write them. We spend hours and hours writing letters of recommendation. We do multiple drafts on it. We have other people proofread it in the department, or sometimes my wife, if she'll do it, just to make sure that we're doing the best job that we can. So we ask the kids usually to give us, and I think it's like about 20 school days. It tends to be just enough time so we can sit, and then we prioritize. We're going to get our November 1 deadlines first, then our November 15th kids done, then our December 1st kids done. But we do not share teacher letters with the students or the parents. They go directly to the institution.
Hello, I know that Algonquin no longer offers to calculate the GPA class ranking. So the question is that when you provide the school profile to the college, do you also display the high generic class ranking, like top 1%, top 5, top 10% for this student, or there's no ranking information at all?
So I just want to make sure I have the question correct, but Algonquin does not rank its students based off GPA. So we will send off their GPA from 9th, 10th, and 11th grade. It's based off their final grades. And the question was, do we provide information about how we come up with that number, or?
With the school profile.
Oh, yeah. So we do send along a school profile that indicates what each level of course is, all the different courses that we have available at Algonquin, that helps the admissions counselors from all over understand what our school, how we came up with our school numbers. But even beyond that, it also shows like the school's average SAT scores. So it shows that our school as a whole might be performing at X compared to the rest of the state. So it does show that we're also a very rigorous school, and that goes out to all the admissions counselors so they can use and analyze all of that data. And I have a question right here.
Hi, thanks. Actually, I want to ask, follow up on that one. Are we competitive? Can you rank that? You know, tell us a little bit more about the school itself. And then my other questions was, how many early decisions school can we apply to? Is it 1, 2, 3, 4, you know? And then finally, my last one is I was interested to hear that the school actually reached out to the guidance counselor and talk about the student. When will that happen?
So I don't have like where we rank statewide as far as like Algonquin's the number 30 high school in Massachusetts. I know that we, with our MCAS rankings, we perform very, very high, and that is information that gets sent out to us. With early decision schools, so if you are going to apply early decision, which is that binding, you can only apply early decision to that one school. Okay, so you have to pick or have your student pick the school that they fall in love with, that they're most comfortable with, and then it can only be one school, and then you're signing an agreement that you're only sending in one early decision application.
And about so the other question I believe was if a college counselor would call us if they had a question. I think that's fairly rare that that happens for me. And sometimes they might have a question about something on the application or a piece that they feel might be missing. I think it might be more common that, you know, if anything, sometimes, well, I don't want to say that, but we might reach out to like an admissions counselor to, if we had something to clarify that we sent, you know what I mean? But I don't think it's very, very rare that they contact us.
Thanks. If you've already filled out a FAFSA for a former, you know, an older child, do you need to get a new ID for this student? Like if we've already been filling out FAFSAs? Every
student needs an FSA ID. So each individual student. And they have to create their own account, and you can't create it for them. Like they need their information for the FSA ID.
I believe the scattergram function in Naviance requires an unweighted GPA, and also some of the other calculators online for figuring out how high, you know, how competitive you would be to a certain school requires unweighted GPA data. I haven't found on the website a place where we can get GPAs translated into that form. How do we go about that?
So it's tricky. So the question is, so on scattergrams, our GPA uses our weighted scale. And just so everybody knows, when you're looking at that data, it's from seniors who have graduated. So they have 4 years of data to come up with the GPA that's on the scattergrams. If you go to the program of studies under guidance, there's not a simple way to recalculate GPA, so just so everybody knows. So we use a weighted scale. You might go to a college campus and say, our average accepted student is a 3.5, and students might be, great, well, I'm a 3.8. Well, they're on an unweighted scale, we're on a weighted scale. So what they would have to do is recalculate their GPA, and they would have to assume, so you can see here, if you're in an honors course and you have an A, it's 5.0. If you're in a college prep, it's 4.0 for that same grade. So it's significantly different. They would have to go through all their final grades and assume that they're all at the CP level. So ignore the AP column and the honors column and just go through the college prep column and recalculate GPA kind of on your own. And there's a formula at the top right here that explains how to do it. And the quality points part where it says 5.0, or that would all be on the CP scale. So you would use that formula, and you can like email your counselor if you're wanting help to the link, or help trying to figure that out. So it's on the Algonquin webpage, guidance, and then it's the program of studies. Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry, academics program of studies, not guidance. It's a academics program of studies. So the academics at the top and then program of studies.
My question is about FAFSA and just understanding. I have multiple children at home. I have 3 that will be in college at the same time. This is my first going. Does FAFSA consider that?
Yes. So it considers, I don't know exactly how it all breaks down, to be totally honest, but I know if you have students currently in college, that is a factor with how they calculate your estimated family contribution. So the numbers can change. Oh, first one going. So then does it? I don't think it does.
I wouldn't guess for the first one. What you can always do when you have your second and third, then you always going to have a conversation with the financial aid office at the college. So they're going to give you a package when your student gets in, and then a financial aid package will follow. If the package does not make sense or does not work for your family and your student is really invested in going to school, call them back, have a conversation, and sometimes they'll come back with an additional package beyond that. My family did that for me when I was applying to school. I know a lot of parents who've had that. The worst case scenario, you call the financial aid office at the college, explain your situation, and if they don't come back with another package that makes more sense for you, then you're going to look elsewhere. But it's always good to have a conversation to see if they can adjust the package if possible. Mm-hmm.
Remember, the students have to apply every year, so it's going to change because their first year they may not have any other siblings in college, but the second year maybe they do. So now when they reapply for the second year, those numbers can change. So it's going to change year to year. I'm sorry.
Yep. If you have a student who's applying for a science-based program or another program that requires the subject tests, well, in particular for science, will schools take the ACT alone without the subject test typically or not?
So there's many schools, and you can see this right under their admissions page. So they're going to have a admissions page, and then they're going to have requirements for application, and they're going to say we require the SAT general test and maybe 2 subject tests involved on top of that. A lot of schools will say SAT, if they are asking for subject tests, they'll say SAT general and maybe 2 subject tests. It could be a science one if your student's applying for a specific science-related major. They will also say a lot of times, or we will take the ACT with writing in lieu of the subject test. So a lot of colleges will give you the option of subject tests and the SAT general test, or ACT with writing, and they will no longer need the subject test to be submitted. But it's really school specific, so that's why you just have to be on those individual school websites, just jotting down kind of what the specific requirements are for that college. But I see that for a lot of colleges, they will take ACT with writing instead of the subject test.
Hi, I just have a couple comments from my experience so far with college, the process. I have a daughter who just finished sophomore year, and for the FAFSA, the focus really is tuition paying schools. So if you have multiple students, I'm speaking to the parent here. So if you have a student multiple students in any school that is a tuition paying school, so it could be high school, it can be college, that's what they kind of take into account, as opposed to just a public school, there's 3 kids there and one's entering college. That's kind of the focus. From visiting different colleges along the way, the topic of weighted GPA and GPA in general, a lot of colleges will, they don't take into account ranking or anything. They'll re-rank the student on their own GPA process. So even though we have weighted, they still might unweight it and recalculate it themselves into their process. So however that fits for any of you, Just consider that. So even though, you know, it looks like you're 3.95, you might end up being higher, you could be lower. That's just how they tend to calculate it. I think there's one more thought that I have, but I'll have to remember what that is.
So some colleges will take, if you're applying as a science major, they're going to weigh your science classes more heavily on your transcript and maybe take off some of your elective art classes possibly and not factor those into the overall GPA. But every single college will get our transcript and then they're going to recalculate it to their own standards when it comes time for deciding on admissions. Any other questions?
Two questions regarding recommendation letters. The first is if a school or college asks for a math teacher recommendation letter, is AP Stats considered math or has to be pre-calc? So
AP Math is considered math. I mean AP Stats, sorry.
AP
is
Stats,
considered
statistics.
math. AP Math is definitely considered math, but AP Stats as well.
Okay. Second question is, besides regular teachers, like junior teacher recommendations, is it a good idea to ask for a recommendation from a club advisor just to highlight something, or college is not even going to look at it?
So you're asking if they should ask an advisor for an outside? There is, and just so I think it was covered before a little bit, but just to make sure that we definitely recommend that their primary teacher is a core class from junior year that they have for junior year. But they do allow, like, if there's a coach or if there's someone that's, you know, it could even be like their gymnastics teacher for the last like 10 years or whatever it may be. On the Common App, there's a spot where you can actually add an outside recommender. So students can potentially send an outside recommendation. They actually request the letter from this person. They get a Naviance Common App email, and then they attach their letter to the student's Common App account. So it depends on the college. Some colleges allow it, and some don't. But if they do, that's definitely an opportunity a student could take advantage of.
We always tell kids to be careful too, is if they send a letter of recommendation off, the school has to read it. So if a kid is sending 6 letters of recommendation, by the time they read through the 3rd letter of recommendation, it starts to be a little bit of overkill. So every kid's gonna have a guidance letter of recommendation. Every kid is gonna have 1 to 2 teacher letters of recommendation. And if then they're asking a coach or a boss outside of school, by the time the admission counselors through their 5th or 6th letter of recommendation, they definitely get the picture at that point. So we really want them to have strong letters of recommendation, but they don't have to overdo it with the number that they send off to the colleges.
Is there any kind of central resource outlining which schools have good special needs programs, like if a student's coming in with, you know, some kind of disability or something like that? Seems like increasingly schools have, you know, for kids with ADHD or some other social issue, they need a little extra support. Is there any central resource to find out which schools are ranked high for that type of service?
So I think the best for that, it would be schedule a meeting with your guidance counselor, because we've all had students and we can make recommendations, and then we can pull resources from the rest of the guidance staff or from special ed if we need to give you guys some good options for potential schools. But for any of those like niche schools that you're looking at, schedule a meeting with a counselor. We can sit down and we can make recommendations for you guys around. I mean, they all have, there's rankings out there through, just through Google. You could find that special ed programs depending on the college, but it also is, would that college be a good fit for your student overall? So just knowing your student's profile, I would say schedule a meeting with your guidance counselor, and that would be a good topic to bring up, and they could help maybe assist you with the list from there.
Oh, sorry.
My question has to do with demonstrated interest. I know that I personally have been looking at more colleges than my son. When they track demonstrated interest, is it the students' interest, or is it a combination of the family? How do they know that it's, you know, 1 or 2 emails or 3 emails looking at any given school?
So I definitely, so if everyone knows, the colleges do keep track of kind of what your student is doing. We actually, a couple of years ago, went on a visit, and it was more so than I thought. So when they take a visit, like I always encourage, even if they're going to visit a campus and they weren't intending to get an official tour, always check in with admissions so that they know that they're there. They track that. If they see them at a college fair, they track that. If they come down to an admissions rep visit here at Algonquin, they track that. If they send an email back and forth, all of those things, believe it or not, matter. If you live 30 minutes away from a college and you've never visited campus, that matters, because they're going to want to make sure they give a seat or a potential applicant someone who really is invested and wants to attend that campus. So those things do matter. So they are tracking that stuff. Whether it regards, I don't think the parent piece, that's not going to matter so much. So if you're contacting them quite a bit, that's not going to have an impact. They really care about the student piece, and that's what's really going to matter. On the flip side, if it's their dream school and they start contacting the counselor like every other day, that's not good either, right? So it's like they don't want to be overwhelming, but a thank you note or whatever it may be after a tour, like those things are always great to do. Setting up that interview, which Ms. Mulcahy talked about, I think, and then setting up that thank you note, that's also a fantastic opportunity to take advantage as well.
If the schools are farther away, obviously they understand that you can't get out to every single school out in California or the Midwest or down south. He just doesn't have the time and money to do it, but that's when students need to take advantage of some of the regional events or some of the college fairs and making sure they're checking in with the college booth at that fair, filling out info cards. If the counselors from schools that are farther away are coming to Algonquin, make sure they're scheduling visits with us in the CRC and meeting with that counselor. Communicating over email with some of those schools that are farther away is important to do, and being on the school's portal, checking those, because they're going to give a login with a username for that school portal, and they will check if the student is actually logged into that portal to see like next steps of the application. So some of those schools that are farther away, you can't get on the campus as much as you would want, but doing those extra steps, I would say, are important to do.
Yeah, and just to I missed the point over here, but kind of asking, what about going on the website? So again, as Dave just mentioned, if they give you a username and ID and you log into the website, they track that as well. They track they can see where you've been on the website, what you're doing, are you following your interest, or if they sent you a survey, did you fill out that survey, whatever it may be, and they look at that. Like even on the visit we went to, they sent the students an email and said, hey, can you guys just do this for us real quick and just click on a link and fill something out? And they saw the students who didn't do it and the ones that did, and that matters to them.
I have a quick question about college visits here at Algonquin. Last year, my son kind of missed the ball on all of them because he didn't know they were happening. Is there a tool that you guys do to let parents know so we can help our kids manage that better?
There should be email blasts that go out with what schools are coming. Like for your son, every single week we put on morning announcements what schools are coming and when they're coming. And then in our workshops to begin the year, we tell kids where to log on to Naviance, and then they can see a calendar of all the schools that are coming, and they can sign up well in advance. So at our workshop next year for parents, we will show you where that is as well. It's right here up on the screen. It says college visits. They're not going to have the huge list of schools now, but as the schools are starting to get scheduled, they'll have the schools. Yep, absolutely. So parents will be able to log on to their Naviance account. They'll be able to see the visits that are coming. You won't be able to sign your student up through the parent account, but the student can go up and sign up for those visits. Yep, you can tag them or remind them. But yeah, they have ample reminders through announcements, through Naviance, through emails. The list is coming.
Do any of the West Coast schools come?
Yeah, right. There's like, I'd say over 100 schools at least. It's around probably 2 or 3 schools a day that come for a solid couple of months. It's also important to note real quick, if the school's coming at 8:15, that's when your AP Stats class is. It's probably not advisable to miss AP Stats to go visit that school, but you can let the CRC coordinator know that, hey, I have an AP Stats test, I can't come down right then. And they'll actually talk to the admissions rep, get the information for the student. The admissions rep, like, yeah, that's a really great, responsible student. I'm glad they didn't miss that test. And they'll get them packets of information for them. Yes. So Westboro has a college fair coming up. And I think I forgot to mention, but we also have our college fair. It was on page 14 at the bottom with the date. Oh, there's the, right on Naviance.
June 6th, thank you.
June 6th.
Any other questions? All right, well, thank you guys all for coming. We appreciate it.